Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the NLC Spring 2023 Day 2. We are here with Game 4, Game of the Day. It's Ruddy versus Riddle.
Up the Ruddy. All right, up the Ruddy, all right? Okay, this is the game where we finally get two undisputed, after one day, top teams playing off against each other, all right? This is not up team, bottom team. Oh, one of these bottom teams could be mid-tier teams. None of this, all right? Two teams that stomped the game the moment they won something are going to be against each other, and we're going to see which one of them is better, and I'm very excited for this particular matchup.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely a barn burner. And I think the really interesting thing for me is that Ruddy was our only victorious team that didn't play heavy split push champion in the side lane yesterday. We had a couple of Fioras, we had a Jax, but Rifty was on the Cassante, and it was actually Nita who ended up doing a lot of the damage for Ruddy, whereas Riddle were relying on Banderas in the top lane with that Fiora. So I feel like we've already had a clashing of styles just based off both of these teams' previous games.
It's very interesting because Nita was actively split pushing in that game, so they had their split pusher in mid lane. So split pushing might just be a thing in the NLC, I guess. But the big thing with Ruddy was that they were looking more like natives early draft, right? With their Sona, with their Enchanter, and Riddle immediately, they don't want to deal with these kinds of Enchanter plays. Riddle also, they had that Fiora top side, but they're jungler, all right? Johan more or less played for himself and a little bit through mid, and the guy that we really saw shining later on was more Reptile on that Zeri once he'd scaled in on that first team fight, untouchable, dealing so much damage. But something I'm really interested in is that Antwer, the guy that we just interviewed, right, where he was able to find something against Ruddy was these early neutral objectives, was these Drakes, or was the initial Herald that got stolen from him, but he had priority on it, right? And Riddle, with Kiba's map movements and Johan's play, they were first on all their neutral objectives yesterday. They were very, very good at this particular thing, and I'm interested to see Ruddy tested on that early, because obviously they get to scale with a Sona, with a Sivir, with a Kassadin, shock horror, they're able to win the game, right? But what if Riddle say no? We're contesting the map at very early points. We ain't seen you do this yet, Ruddy. How do Ruddy respond to that? Reptile's gonna be on that Zeri again, right? We just talked about it. So much DPS yesterday. He was my personal MVP of that game. See the argument for Johan, but I think Reptile was super impactful in a lot of these fights. Let's see what Ruddy's response to it is. Their response yesterday to an opening Yuumi was very creative. Let's see if they have a creative one there, or if we're just going to see Vi coming out. Sivir again for them, Voxney. Let's see what they do. The classic here would be Vi, but they're hovering Wukong and Mumu, a bunch of things.
Load of different stuff. I mean, we've seen Ashe Sivir as a duo previously, and it's done well for itself. The Rise actually unbanned for the first time in a little while here. Not used to seeing this champion available, and I believe that has just been locked in for Ruddy.
Rise Sivir, also a very classic composition. My question would be, if you're going to get the Sivir anyway and you've given over Zeri, they're not going to be able to pick it away. So you may as well go something like Rise and Vi. I would imagine Riddle want to one-shot the Vi pick now, because that's something that can maintain on towards this Zeri very easily. But they're not looking at that. They are instead looking towards the Wukong, but the Lulu. Very high priority in the LPL right now, particularly with the Zeri. One thing though, Kiba was roaming on the Nautilus yesterday to make those early plays happen that we were talking about. Instead of going all in on that and try to do those early map movements, Riddle are like, you know what, we were winning all the team fights yesterday anyway. Why not just try and match Ruddy on those team fight points where they feel strong as well? The gauntlet has been thrown. The cat is here from Kasing to Antwer, over potentially towards Nash. It's locked in as well. So it's Sivir, Rise, and Yuumi. First two being very classic SKT 2015, 2016, 2017 kind of style there, right? With your split pushing Rise, with your immense amounts of wave clear with these, with the obvious double engage that you have there on the rotations around the map, and then the Yuumi coming in, right, giving that added bit of survivability and giving us the question, what's going to happen top lane? right? We saw them pick top lane on this 4th pick before, and it was the Kaysonte, and that's still up. The Vi is now off the table. The Vi is entirely off the table. They don't have to deal with that. If they did have to deal with that, the Lulu was there to polymorph us, and maybe that's why there's been such a delay in it. I don't know what we're going to see for the next pick. I'd assume Kaysonte. Riddle could ban it. Let's see what happens.
Well, I mean, right. So if I'm Banderas right now, the Jax is available, the Fiora is off the table. So I've got one strong split pusher that I can play towards. Do I honestly care if I'm laning against the Kaysonte? Well, apparently we don't want to be playing Jax either. So that line of thought is completely out of the window. Now, Ruddy in position. What, they've got jungler, they've got top lane available to pick.
They had 3 potential picks, but this is interesting. This makes the Yuumi make a lot more sense. And
yes,
Yuumi
it does.
plus 6 plus Hecarim. That could be insane. But it's just going to be Lee Sin.
But they're not going to do it.
I'm actually quite surprised to see the Lee Sin here, to be honest. The Lulu has a lot of options against. To show Lee Sin this early invites anti-dive on towards Riddle, and their composition can get filled with juggernauts. I'm now thinking about Darius. I'm now thinking about Set. I'm thinking about Lissandra as well, that they're hovering. And I can also think about Kaysonte with that, right? Champions that make Lee Sin non-functional later on in the game. That list has been locked.
Yeah, and I mean, if Polymorph was something terrible to dive into initially, Polymorph and a Glacial Tomb and all of the lockdown CC available, and a Hextech ultimatum as well for Banderas. So we're getting a little bit of that lockdown and some of that split push threat from the Riddle top laner.
Darius. This is possibly a Darius game. Oh, or they might just go for Ornn. Ornn Yuumi is actually a pretty potent combo. Ornn Sivir Rise would be nuts. Kaysonte is still up. How did Kaysonte get all the way?
You see,
how did it get?
They've locked it. They've locked it, but yeah, how the hell does that get to R5?
Yeah, and I mean, did that? But you have to think the only reason it would make it that far is that Ruddy figured that they have a counter pick for the Kaysonte or something like this. Because otherwise, why not just pick Kaysonte on 4 and then go for a jungler that can potentially counter pick your entire opponents on 5, right? Why go for the Lee Sin there and make him non-functional against the Lulu, against the Lissandra, against the composition that you ended up against? And also, you're not going to convince me that a top lane exists that can't play Kaysonte. Why did Riddle allow that to go through to their opponents? You know, you're not going to convince me of this on Middelkoy. It's not going to. There's something I'm not seeing here. There was some game of chess between these coaches that I'm just not privy to. Right? There's some inside baseball that I need to explain this. But the Kaysonte got through to 5, and you have a fairly simple composition to execute for Ruddy there. It's very strong in team fights. Versus a Riddle composition that is a bit harder to get off, right? The Camille is a bit necessary because the Lissandra doesn't do as much damage. So much is on Reptile in these fights. The Lissandra can pill him, the Wukong can disrupt for him, the Lulu can buff him, and the Camille is not guaranteed to be there all the time, but if she does, it's a flank, it's a distraction. Reptile is the one that has to do the DPS, right? Whereas on Ruddy, Ryze can DPS, Sivir can DPS. Kaysonte, among his many talents, is DPS, right? So they're down a league, potentially down top.
It feels like every so often there's a top laner that's released that can just do everything for a few patches, and that's just the way that they operate. We've had the Ornn, we've had the Kaysonte. I remember release Camille being played at support and stuff like that. Oh. Anyway.
Maybe this is what Oda1 meant in that interview he gave lately, where he said, when it comes to Worlds, everyone realizes top is OP, but top is always OP. Maybe that's what he means. It's that there's just all these top laners that just do everything. You know?
I mean, the NLC has already showed off a fair few top lane carries, so I don't know. Maybe there's some truths to Oda1's words. Definitely been around long enough to accumulate some wisdom like that. What is he, like 28, 29 now?
Yeah, he's 28, I believe. Yeah.
I think in esports, terms, that's like dead, isn't it? Essentially.
You know, I worked with that guy in 2016. I feel very old now.
Crikey, yeah.
Yeah, 2016 HUK. It was a fun time. I'm telling you, he's the best top player in the world. He's not playing in this game, but you know, he gets where it is. He gets that these two champs in top lane are absolutely broken. And he's right. I trust him on that. Rifty already showing a good performance on the Kaysonte. Many people have shown a good performance on Camille at this point. So yeah, even though, you know, we think about them Vox and we think about Niter, this may be a game that comes down to the top laners. Let's see how Johan plays around this. That's going to be really interesting for me, because he somewhat ignored Banderas last time, right?
Well, and he didn't end up needing to gank that lane, but there are definitely occasions where the Vi was up in the top side, decided not to gank, and maybe Banderas could have gotten a kill, and you could have accelerated this the split pushers Fiora in the previous game a little bit faster, so we'll have to see if that's an adaptation that Riddle's jungler is going to make. He's not going to be top lane for a while, though, because he has started on the northern quadrant of his jungle, same as No Name, both pathing towards bottom lane.
I mean, obviously they had a good showing today, right? But, like, Johan did that against a team of a lower caliber than Ruddy, right? And I wonder how Ruddy would react. No Name versus Johan, very good matchup here. He was matching his opponent Antwer yesterday. Can he just match Johan? Does he have a good read on this guy? He's playing a heavy ganking jungler that doesn't necessarily care about his own camp resets to the same extent. Maybe up to level 6 you do. That's how Trick used to play this champion out. But it gives him the opportunity to match Johan, to prevent Johan getting off what he wants. And to be like, no, you're not going to get the MVP today. You're not even going to get the W. The W is all there for Ruddy.
And it's a composition that definitely has reminders of what they were playing yesterday. We've got hyper-scaling mid laner who's going to build Rod of Ages, be incredibly tanky and do 1 million damage. We've got them Vox Knight here on the Sivir. We've got Rifty on the Cassante as well. It's sort of the who's who of champions that if you leave them alone, they will just take over the game.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those cruise control compositions, I guess you could say, right? It doesn't steer itself, but sometimes it might as well, you know? And it will eventually
as long as the Ruddy rudder is pointing in the right direction, they should be absolutely fine.
But let's not downplay the power of champions on Riddle, right? Zeri is in a ridiculous spot, and Reptile has a very good game on her yesterday. Lulu makes that so much worse. And look where Zeri is right now. She has the Cull in the bot lane, Lulu playing to her advantages against the possible Yuumi. Sure, Sivir isn't dropping all her HP there, but if they go even, Reptile's going to hit her item breakpoints before then Voxnay hits his, and that could be a better early.
Rifty. No Name looking for Banderas. Ooh, the Sonic Wave into the resonating strike connects. They will eventually chase down Banderas, although he is running away pretty damn quickly. Fire Rain is moving over as well. Johan is here. The hook shot into the wall dive. This is very aggressive from the Riddle top laner, but they're going to be able to capitalize on it, as that is a double lockdown, and No Name has nowhere to go but his grave. First blood for Banderas.
Scuttle did some heavy lifting there, allowed Camille to get to the point where she was reunited with her team and she was going to get her E back up. And No Name, what looked to be a very simple play, ended up being an overextension, and Riddle immediately able to capitalize against Ruddy. You pronounce those so similarly that I'm going to get it mixed up at some point, and I'm terrified of that eventual sentence.
You'll only be heading for a Don-Jake ratio on Twitter. There are worse fates, I assure you, mate.
Game ratio by
it's
Don
strong.
Jake. Never let it go.
I've seen it happen before. I feel like it is a possibility. But, aside from that, as it stands, Riddle, first blood on a Camille of all things. This is absolutely brilliant. Going to get you towards that Divine Sunderer spike a little bit quicker. And that is such an effective item, even against a champion like Cassante, who is a little bit problematic at the moment.
Both solo lanes hitting 6 right now, though, which is going to open some big map play opportunities for both the Rise and the Lissandra. So let's see, is Riddle just going to try to play through this priority they have topside, or what's the rest of the game plan? You see the Lissandra leaning up, even though all of Ruddy is leaning for this Drake. No Name lands the Q, but he's not looking to overextend twice. Fool me once, you know. You can't get fooled again. Real OGs know that.
There's about
okay?
4 people in chat that understand that reference.
Don't make me. I felt
Oh,
once already in this cast. Don't.
I mean, it's not mission accomplished yet for either of these teams, but it's definitely Riddle have gotten off to the better start, and No Name has been caught once more. It's the exact same place. It's the exact same fate. Another kill for Banderas.
No Name, he was able to match Antwer yesterday, but he is being met by this Riddle topside the entirety of this early game. Camille ran circles around him. Lissandra and Wukong have grouped up against him. He's not finding anything here. He's not matching anything. He's just getting caught out this game. It's not the same caliber, and Camille now 2-0 up. We may actually see a Cassante get shut down for once, which, I'm going to be real, is going to be kind of satisfying.
Champion does seem to persist, and we had questions of the Lee Sin pick, honestly, when it was locked in, right? We were saying this is a champion where you need to get something done in the early stages. You need to be visiting these lanes and getting positive things out of them. Well, 8 minutes in, 0-2, down CS on Johan as well. It's not a great look for the Ruddy jungler thus far.
I'm missing the Hecarim hover. That thing I'd still be thinking on one item. He's going to do some damage similar to Olaf, especially with the Sivir Yuumi on this composition. But with the Lee, yeah, I mean, you're delayed heavily on your level 6. Your ability to play with your lanes heavily diminished. And, I mean, the enemy composition kind of prevents you doing anything utility-wise aggressively into them outside of very minor circumstances. So just being more of a liability than anything in this game. Partly the pick and partly some of the play. Riddle have his number, alright? They just have his number. He is the one being matched.
It's not been a great start to him, but Ruddy hardly out of it. Yes, 2 kills down. Yes, Riddle have got themselves 1,500 gold lead. I wouldn't be surprised if most of that is on Banderas at this point, but Nita still here on the rise, nearly level 9, nearly fully upgraded that Q, and Denvoxne still farming up a Storm, matching Reptile. Both of these AD carries are going to be massive in team fights where it all comes down to execution.
Yeah, 100%, and honestly, the Sivir gives you multiple chances to win. Imagine trying to close with Riddle's composition against a Sivir comp. It's very difficult to do, and these champions will continue to be relevant later on. Maybe you get to a state where the game is so late, gold leads basically don't exist. These options are still open for Ruddy with their composition, so definitely not out of the game yet. Definitely still have options, but Riddle firmly in the driver's seat until that point.
And with this composition, I feel like there are so many ways that Riddle can make these acceleration plays and go a little bit further. Why are you crying, Banderas? You're having an absolutely chill time. Like, sad B not necessary, but like when you've got stuff like a Camille, a Wukong, a Lissandra, these are champions that love diving under towers, have ways of resetting aggro and being a little bit sneaky. So if Nita and Denvoxne just want to farm and scale up, Riddle have ways of shutting that down and preventing those late game options from being a reality that Ruddy can play towards.
Yeah, they do. At that point, you're just looking to the passage of time, and I guess it's all entirely going to be about that Sivir wave clear. But at least Ruddy get the first Infernal. That's actually quite huge. It's not just a boost to damage, it's also a boost to the potential healing that the Yuumi is going to be able to give the rest of her team later on in the game. And that could be very huge for them. Also, these kinds of ratios going up in terms of AD and AP matter a lot when you have caster-based champions. And Sivir, yes, she does a lot of autos, but she is fundamentally a caster champion. So one Infernal, that actually can translate to a pretty significant amount of gold later on in the game in real terms. So they're getting what they can. They're getting what they can, right?
Yeah.
Not entirely out. I want to know what they do with Lissandra now, because she's being quite static. Now they have her finally moving in towards bot side, and they're looking potentially to catch out Sivir as she moves back. But you also have No Name, and you have Nitra on this rise, moving in to try to actually give Sivir the clearing and not be so afraid of a potential Lissandra getting her before she hits tower.
No Name definitely wanted to take that Q. There was definitely a small part of No Name's brain that was like, go on. Yeah, go on.
Lee syndrome.
I believe that's what it's called. But
yeah,
do you know what?
I remember
Credit to him, he's slowed down the silly mistakes. Ruddy have stopped bleeding the gold as much, whether that's a case of improvement of play or Riddle just waiting for an opportunity to use the lead that they've got for themselves around this top side was yet to be seen. But with that Divine Sunderer now completed for Banderas and now for Johan, this is a duo that you really cannot scrap against.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, this game against two teams where they didn't really explode their games until 15 minutes, we've had a bit of action early, but we are seeing these kinds of slow, methodical plays again, mostly just reactions to mispositioning so far. But this Herald's going to get dropped, the map's going to open up, and we're going to start seeing the brains, the craniums on these two teams, and stop talking about players in terms of duos and start talking about them in terms of 5.
I think that's where both these compositions are going to function most strongly, right? There's split push potential for Banderas and Lissandra with that spellbook as a champion that could move to side lanes, get a bit of a shove, and going to have to be matched against Knight a bit. The 5v5s are really what this game is going to come down to.
Yeah, 100%. And what you could end up having there is Camille being used in the flank position. Lissandra goes all in, and then Camille comes out of her flank spot and joins her in the backline. You have double, potentially triple dive, and Zeri can be left alone in those triple dive situations in a way that other champions simply can't be. Is the anti-dive there for Ruddy? That becomes a question of K'Sante. It was going to become a question of Lee Sin. Let's see if they can still be useful at those points.
It's going to be a tough call. And I did like that you touched on Reptile. He was the player sort of coming out of draft who we were looking at being the real carry for this Riddle composition. I've always liked about Reptile as a player is not particularly flashy or very show-offy, but he's very, very reliable. And when you're looking at a role, his only job really is to do damage. Having someone who's reliable, will exist in laning phase, even if he isn't played towards, and then pop off on teamfight, it's brilliant, and it fits perfectly for a champion like Zeri.
His debut split on Prime League showed some pretty incredible team fighting out of him. He won Rookie of the Split there. And he showed yesterday why he was able to claim that on Unicorns of Love. And, you know, he's looking to get to EUM and prove that he is still of that caliber. This is definitely a game to do it. Obviously, there's been a lot of action topside, but again, that's been topside responses to stuff Ruddy's been doing, rather than Riddle saying, we want to play around that topside. This being opportunistic more than anything. I still believe this game plan firmly entails this Zeri's team fighting in mind. I mean, look at that composition. If anything's built to team fight, it is that. Or, you know, Ruddy's composition, of course, also looks like something built to team fight.
And this is, again, what we were talking about, the smart elements of Reptile's gameplay. Yes, he's lost the first tower, but you saw Niter and No Name rooming down, starting to cheat down towards bot side. Reptile and Keeper had stayed, probably both dying alongside that tower. So whilst they lose out, it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yep, and this right here is an area where Riddle are still open to criticism. Johan absolutely playing good for his own economy, but on these kinds of bridge champions, do you really want them Voxnade to be sat there 5 plates and a full tower ahead with 2 waves ahead? No, but yet he knew that he was bot side opposite of where Johan was. Johan took the time there to secure his top side, but also to secure his camps, and not necessarily to be where they could most likely force a favorable fight on that bot side and prevent them Voxnade being the win con for Ruddy, which right now he absolutely is. And this is an AD carry that's been a mainstay since his first split of the NLC, winning since his first split in. This guy has technically never lost a split that he's played in NLC. He has a 100% win rate there, both in reverse sweeps. He's a very mentally fortified player. You don't want this guy to get too much for free.
Oh, it's true, right? Well, it was Summer 21 with Tricked, and then he was
Yeah,
Mad Lions Madrid in spring, came on to
yeah,
Dusty 2022 summer, won the entire thing, won the Aurora Open as well, just for the fun of it,
yeah.
and now he's back on Ruddy, who, again, despite falling down a little bit earlier in this game, still absolutely in a fine position, and still one of the teams that we're looking at to be contesting the top spots of the NLC this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, they made a statement yesterday, but so too did their opponents. Their opponents also showed that you can't give them anything. They know how to play with it. And Riddle, this game, they are the guys that have opened with the lead. But Ruddy, they have to think they're confident that some of their win cons have gotten at least a bit what they want. Look at Civi's inventory right now, and look at Zeri's inventory, right? Should be fairly confident that he's going to be more viable in the team fight. Riddle, though, they're putting a lot on this Camille. They're now playing away from the Zeri. They do think this Camille is where it's at. Let's see if they're able to pull it off. We have seen split push comps work with success lately. Let's see if they're able to do it.
I'm going to be real honest with you, veteran. I just want a fight to happen at some point, because the game has
me
slowed
too.
down
I'm fed up of all this.
a reasonable
Just
degree.
Alright, I'm
But
done with all
it
this.
makes sense. It makes sense to a certain degree, right? Because I feel like when you are playing against another strong team, which both these teams find themselves in that position, a way that you can often lose games is just by making a silly mistake that the enemy team is going to punish absolutely ruthlessly and without any sort of prejudice at all. So playing a little bit of a slower early game, a little bit of a more passive style, especially when you do have scaling carries on both sides, I think is a natural reaction to this matchup, but really does beg the question, when do one of these teams decide, okay, we're strong enough now to really start fighting?
1 minute and 52 seconds when Baron comes up and they just start contesting every ward in topside river. Or, if not then we're looking in 2 minutes and 30 seconds when the next Drake spawns, which I believe is a Hextech Drake, which will actually be really big for both teams. Civi can get a lot off with that. With the Hextech Soul, Reptile can get a decent amount off with that. With the Hextech Soul, Camille loves that as well. So, actually a pretty good Soul coming up. But yeah, until then, neither team really has a reason to go and fight No Name. And both teams seem to understand that. And so they're just kind of staring off at each other, wondering how many times the casters can say, well, Ruddy can scale, well, Riddle also has scaling options, well, Riddle have good teamfight stuff, and I guess Camille's doing stuff, well, Ruddy have good economy on their box lane, he's going to scale, and, you know, they're just going to see how long we can do that and string that out for.
Hopefully not too long. We have had Harold summoned in the mid lane. This will get a charge, but it's not going to be doing too much damage to that. That takes it to around about 50% HP, but the thing about Civi, the thing about Rise, is you stick him in mid lane and the wave disappears.
Yep. And now the waves are meeting. Zeri is clearing, and Sivir is pressing 2 buttons, and the whole wave is gone. And Zeri is finishing the clear, and now then Voxne is taking control bot. And the next wave's coming in. And we'll do it all again, boys!
Oh,
you guys remember how we do this. You rolled in 2014, 2015, Jin Air. How long was it?
Oh, no, hold on. It's
game?
20 minutes. It's 20 minutes, veteran. We're not in Jin Air territory yet. Come on, man.
There's even... Oh, God, I have to tell you. Way back in 2016, behind the scenes, right? We were the next game on after Origin Fnatic, and that game was lasting like up to the 70-minute mark, right? And I'm not joking, the production guys were telling us that they were getting really worried because they don't actually know what the tournament client does when it goes past this point. And they don't know if they're going to have to like redo the entire game or something like that, or what's going to happen. They were really scared. Oh, do you remember that? We talk about Sivir stalling, but there was ZZ Rot Portal. That was where it was.
Oh,
they were all
no.
buying ZZ Rot Portals. And so, yes, stalling can get... We should thank our stars that they only have a Sivir. There were strats back in the day if you wanted to keep a game going.
Well, you sell an item, buy a ZZ Rot, place it in base, sell the item, then buy back the... Oh... Well,
But
thank
these
goodness
guys have had
that's
like
not in
three
the game
easy
anymore.
ones against all. Yes, I mean, this game's gone through some iterations, but you know what's been there through all of them? Sivir. And she's here again,
Is she one of the
one-shotting
original 40
waves.
champions?
I don't know. She might be.
She's been around for ages.
Yeah. She's had a few reworks, but she's fundamentally always been this wave clear behemoth. And here we
Very
go.
difficult
The
to
Drake.
deal with.
Remember in the
Veteran,
Natives game,
are they gonna
these
fight?
neutrals were where everybody looked for the 5-man. Now you have a
I think
choice.
we're gonna
Do you
fight. I think
contest?
we're gonna
They say
fight.
yes!
Fire rate flashing. Forward instead. Voxnay is being jumped onto, but he is somehow still alive. Banderas chasing him down with the ultimate and will claim the shutdown as Riddle are looking to take over the rest of this fight. Nita rooted, shooted in the back. The Glacial Claw going forward. No Name on the run, but he's not going to be able to take that cat to safety as she is locked in place, taken out. It's a triple for Reptile, and Riddle come to life.
6-0. We were looking to either the Baron or the Drake. It turned out to be the Drake because they just want to go as late as humanly possible. And they found the window onto them Boxney. Did them Boxney get a lead in the early? Sure. But we're going to throw everything we have at him, and we have a lot. The 2 kills on Camille did some heavy lifting there. Replay starting a little bit later. I would have liked ZB's already dead there, but they got him, and we're then able to clear up the rest of the team with the powerhouse of the Sivir down. The game is firmly in Riddle's favor, and so far that has meant that the game would go into Riddle's favor. Every time in the NLC so far where we've had a team win one of these crucial team fights in the mid to late game, right? That has been the team that wins. Let's see if that's going to remain the case, or if Ruddy find a way to pull things back in.
And Veteran, Reptile, didn't have a fun time in lane, was chilling, didn't die, but he lost his tower. He did fall to that disadvantage to Voxnay. But as soon as it hits 20 minutes, as soon as Reptile starts grouping up with the rest of his team, you can see why so many people rate this guy so highly. He is immaculate when it comes to those team fights. And now Riddle, 4,000 gold in the lead, a couple of Drakes as well. It's an advantage that he can start to press forward. And Ruddy now firmly on the back foot for, I think, the first time this game.
For sure, but here is the big difference in the compositions, right? You don't really have these heavy diving options on the side of Ruddy like you do on the side of Riddle, and Riddle's options went all in. Fire Rain and Banderas burned everything that they could to take out them Voxnay, and that ultimately won them the fight. And Ruddy don't have the same kind of tools to control Reptile. They said no to the Vi in Champ Select. They said no to things like the Hecarim that could maybe, with its move speed, make it all the way and chase into Kingdom Come. Maybe it's because the Lulu said no to those kinds of dive compositions, but because of that, Reptile has a lot of freedom that then Voxnay simply doesn't have.
It's a very well executed team fight by Riddle, and now 25 minutes near or nearabouts. They are investing multiple members. The pressure around the Baron. Banderas doesn't have the teleport available, so if he wants to join his team, it's going to be a fairly long trek towards the top side of the map, but it's very clear what Riddle want next.
Yeah, 100%. This Baron has so many wards scattering it, and can Ruddy even contest them at this point? Likely not a straight contest. Can they do a full split push against them? Try to get them away, try to take the wards back one by one? Nita was going for it, but after crashing that wave, already going for a grouping. But when Camille shows here, let's see what Ruddy does. Camille shows on bot lane, then Voxnay immediately clears midsection, and the whole team shifts up to take the vision. So the split push is the way. Split Riddle apart, and oddly enough, Ruddy don't have the 5v5 them, and they lose those right now. So even though their team comp identity clearly wants to be going for some of these 5v5s, they do have options with the Rise, with the K'Sante to split push and split up Riddle at those points where they don't want to fight them. And much like Verdant had to do in our game early on against natives, Ruddy now have to have the discipline to do that consistently. Riddle, on the other hand, I think they have to be willing to maybe drop a tower, drop some minions, and just keep accelerating. They can afford to drop some of those so long as they get more on their side. The game is in their hands. Just be aggressive and be confident on it. Don't get fooled by Ruddy trying to split you around the map here.
Yeah, you need to advance the map state, because fundamentally, if you're not getting closer to Ruddy's base, it's just harder and harder to shut down the Rise and the Sivir. Eventually, they will be very powerful. Denvoxne now has that Navori Quickblades, now at 3 items on the Sivir, where she traditionally turns into something that is very, very difficult to contest, and that's only gonna get worse and worse as she gets more and more items. Reptile with the Infinity Edge as well. This Zeri is no slouch. The AD carries in teamfights are going to be so pivotal for the result of this game.
Yeah, interested to see how heavy the Navori Quickblade build impacts the Sivir as well. But yes, Reptile, 3-0 here, 3 items, one of the broken champs in the game with no real way to lock him down unless, you know, this Lee Rise pull off some absolutely insane stuff. Reptile pulls this off in these fights, and I don't see how they can possibly lose them. Drake is up, and it looks like another contest. We've seen this story before, but will it have the same ending?
Well, it's Ruddy who found their way into the river first. Fire Rain thinking about a flank on the bat side has now been spotted out. Dragon is down to 4,000 HP as in goes the flash engage from the Wukong, and Ruddy are on the run. Riddle have already got a couple of kills for themselves as Johan is being taken low by Denvoxne, but the Sivir is dead. The cat will die as well, and Nita is the lone knight standing against the army of Riddle, who get another clean ace.
The turn by the Wukong, the flank by the Lissandra, another scenario where the Sivir just cannot play the game, the Rise just cannot play the game, and the Reptile can throw as much DPS as he wants to do. Honestly, this Lissandra, you're looking at her as potentially one of the weaker champions that would be coming in, but she's been pivotal 2 team fights in a row here. Her positioning's been really on, and it's been very impactful. And right now, Riddle, 11-0, looking to... Oh, they're actually a Drake down, so they can't technically perfect game, but at least looking to perfect kills against Ruddy. Not a single death so far.
And for Ruddy, contrast this with the game against Unique yesterday. Obviously, there is a difference in the level of the opposition, but... didn't expect the difference would manifest itself in such a tremendous lead for Riddle. Fire Rain is 5 levels up on Denvoxne. A lot of tools being used to try and kill this Lissandra, and they won't even be able to do it.
Just a little bit off there. 1 extra Drake, 1 extra reset, 1 extra kill before that, and that Lissandra's dead every time. But that right there is a big illustration of how far behind Ruddy are, to the point where Lissandra makes a mistake and it's not even a mistake anymore, right? Like, she can absorb that all she wants. Riddle, not just in control of the game, we're essentially waiting for them to close. Though, I've been scarred by Sivir games before, so anything is still somewhat possible. But realistically, we're just looking at a delayed Riddle win or a soon Riddle close.
I don't know, man. I feel like Denvoxne's got like a poster of Teddy, like just next to his computer, and he's just going to embody that.
All right, I'm gonna have to remind
for
you.
The next,
I'm gonna have to remind you, Middlecott, that Jin Air lost those games.
Yeah. Well,
they
I think
lost
as it stands,
very slowly.
As it stands, Ruddy are set up to lose this game because it is an 11,000 gold lead for Riddle. They do have a Hextech Cell spawning in 3 minutes, and they did have a Baron earlier. Ruddy, though, not giving up, realm warping forward, looking to get a pick. They get the kick onto the Wukong, but no name. Ruddy incredibly low, and Riddle are actually turning this one around. Nita has got a kill. Reptile is trying to cut himself away, but he can't escape the Cassante. Rifty going all out and taking down the enemy AD carry. Banderas, though, he's in the base taking structures, and Ruddy are going to be forced to respond.
Okay, but 3 kills for them, you're likely losing that bot lane inhib anyway. Imagine if you try to defend that and you end up in a 5v5. I think you just lose the whole thing. I think they'll be happy to take that and just try to stall the game. Don't lose any more inhibitors, sure, but this is more than you would expect them to get at this point. At least Ruddy have shown they're not going to go down without a fight. Some crucial kills going over to K'Sante, who can be an unkillable behemoth, and one towards the Rise, who does a deceptive amount of damage later on in the game, though obviously it's difficult for him to play against the kind of control Riddle can do with their Lissandra and with their Wukong, and at this stage, with their Camille.
An important consequence, actually, of the shutdowns that went over to Rifty is that Anathema's Chains completion. I'm going to bet that's targeted on Reptile, because if you can CC this Zeri, if you can take her out, then the teamfight power of Riddle goes down a fair bit. Yes, Banderas is in an absolutely terrifying position, although it wouldn't surprise me if he spends the rest of the game on a side lane looking for Nexus towers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's how you should play out the Camille at this point. But, you know, if Ruddy can get more picks like that before she's able to take out that tier 2, then maybe it doesn't even matter so much. She doesn't have the Baron buff rolling anymore, so Ruddy have more time to work with. Maybe even Ruddy try to get the pick on that Camille, but they have to be ahead on rotation against the rest of the full man that Riddle have. There are windows, but Riddle has to open those windows for Ruddy. Ruddy, honestly, still on course to lose this game. There's just glimmers of hope, but they are just glimmers, and they aren't the eventual win that Ruddy wants.
Those glimmers, those embers may be extinguished in 40 seconds as Hextech Drake becomes available, and with the lead that Riddle have built for themselves, buff like that, with the additional power, may just be curtains for Ruddy.
I mean,
you can never count them out.
Blood off of this. You saw Verdant's manager earlier, you know, he wants Ruddy for himself, right? They've been a very loud organization, they've made a big name for themselves on social media. You know, a loss like this to Riddle opens the floodgates.
No name, what are you doing? You can't stand there, mates!
I mean,
that was inefficient jungle
noticing.
pathing, I believe, is the euphemism that we're going to use there. And Devoxy actually still alive for a little bit, but very, very low on HP. Nita forced into the Zonyas. It's been 3 kills, a double there for Reptile as Banderas is now chasing down Nash. It's as easy as you like for Riddle's top laner, and this has been a demolition of Ruddy Esports by one of their competitors at the top of the table in just under 34 minutes. Riddle will take a dominating win against Ruddy Esports.
I mean, more than the Lissandra Camille double dives that made the game unplayable for Sivir. More than the Johan matches that made the game unplayable for No Name. More than Reptile's AD carry team fighting play, more than the fact that Kiba was just there on the Lulu, preventing any dive happening to him, is the fact that Ruddy got to be correct for once. Like, what's up with that? We live in that world now, where Ruddy gets to be right, and we are all wrong when it comes to
Why would you bring that up? Why would you? I was chill, we've had some good games, and then you've really been right. But regardless, the only reason that Ruddy is right is because Riddle kind of systematically deconstructed Ruddy there. It was a very, very passive game, a very, very slow game, similar to Ruddy's win versus Unique yesterday, but this time around, they were on the wrong end of the scoreline.
And a bit different as well, because a lot of these things happened much earlier than we've seen happen for pretty much any of these stomps, to be honest, at least when it comes to the big 3 that we like to treat as the big 3. Ruddy made their mistakes very early on. The Lee Sin got matched by the entirety of Riddle's top side twice, trying to do something up there, going for scuttles, overextending that kill onto the Camille until Camille literally made it to mid lane with the Lissandra, and off of those, they could just never get it back. The Camille was able to use that to shut down Sivir in the very first fight. Lissandra finding these really good flanks off, and all these neutrals ended up just going in the favor of Riddle there. The whole top side there, I mean, hats off to them. And obviously, Reptile, another really good game on the Zeri, but really, the story of this game is what was happening top side.
It was strong performances, and I liked what I saw from Johan. We did say that he was a bit more still playing into a little bit of that selfish mindset, and obviously this was a game where early jungle action, it sort of happened and then it didn't for a fair while, but it was generally strong performances. I think the thing that I really liked from Johan was some of the engages in the team fights. He was so willing to flash Cyclone on that Wukong and just flip someone into the air and completely remove them. And quite often, it was Denvoxte being on the wrong side of that, and found he wasn't really able to contribute damage, even though he had the items on the Sivir.
Yeah, it was such a difficult game for him. I think that the thought process behind the Lee Sin at that stage of the game must be sit on top of them box and Lee kick whoever ends up on top of him, but he can't try to do anything aggressive there. And honestly, there were too many things he'd have to kick away anyway, even if he was on top of the Sivir. Like, maybe you get the Lissandra away, but then the Camille comes zooming in and two-shots your Sivir, right? Maybe you somehow manage to get the Sivir away, but the Monkey is suddenly doing a Cyclone underneath, you know? Like, it was such a difficult game for Ruddy to play out. Do wonder a bit about that Hecarim Lee Sin hover. Don't quite know what was going on there. I think there was a better option there. Maybe go the Kaysonte on 4th and just try to counterpick their composition on your 5th rather than show all of your cards on the 4th pick. I don't know. There are things they could do there in draft, but ultimately, it's a team that needs to be more disciplined in their play in those early stages of the game when they can't just get these matches for free. You can't just wait to win, because teams like Riddle, teams like Nord, maybe even a team like Verdant or Veneer who have had good performances today, they won't just let you wait. They're not going to hold hands and wait with you.
I think that's the key thing to remember, right? It doesn't matter how good your roster may be on paper or even in practice. You can't take teams lightly, and you need to make sure that you are eliminating these mistakes as much as possible. We are now going to be talking to the victorious top laner from Riddle Esports, the Camille himself, Banderas. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, doing good. It's nice to see you guys casting again. I was kind of worried about the broadcast, but good so far.
Don't worry, mate. As long as there are people playing League of Legends, there are going to be people here to yell about it. And well, something to yell about is getting 2 kills incredibly early on a Camille. Obviously, the game slowed down a little bit after that. I kind of want to know how you guys were feeling when we did have that lull in the game where there wasn't too much action going on.
Yeah, I mean, my job is generally just to not get punished. Enemy top, like, he's playing Lee Sin. It's a jungler who's innately scales, like, way worse than Wukong. So he's, like, looking for cheese ganks. So if you pay attention to my laning phase, I was just sitting there, like, letting him freeze the wave, just collecting XP, and I'm chilling until I get the Vine. Like, as long as they don't get to snowball top, they can't really do anything. Like, they have no setup in any other lanes, like bot lane or mid lane. Like, they have some with Ryze, but yeah.
When it comes to the oh, sorry, go on, please finish.
I was just gonna say that we were confident about the scaling, like, and being better players.
Sure.
It's what we think. Like, confidence is key. So we were confident that if we're going late game, we will win.
In the team fights, there was very often a like Lissandra engages, you kind of bounce in and try to 2-shot the Sivir, Wukong engages, Fire Rain flanks, all of this stuff was happening in those team fights and those dies are happening, but if we look outside of the team fights, one of the most impactful things this game was actually your split push, both with and without the Baron. Ruddy were never really able to find any kind of favourable situation because of that. Do you think that's something you're going to continue doing? Because you had Fiora the first game, Camille this second game. Is that the kind of playstyle you like to do in mid game? Because that would make you a very important part of the team overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's a playstyle I've always been good at, but I didn't really get to show it last split. But now I'm playing with good players, really quality roster, and now it's my time to show my skill set, you know? I think generally, like, as long as I keep Ryze in side lane, they have no way to win. Like, they have no proper engage. They need to look for, like, Ryze portals, right? So as long as I'm pressuring side lane, they have no win condition, right? They're just sitting there scaling, and as you see, like we slowly take over the map, and then we play
Yeah.
fights better because we feel like we're better players, is what I think, and then it goes from there, you know.
I like how
Fair enough.
eventually in all sorts of League of Legends analysis, it can come down to we were kind of just better players, so we just went and won. Obviously, Banderas, you think very, very highly of yourself and your teammates, and I don't think there is any reason not to. It has been a great start for you guys. What's the environment like in the Riddle camp right now after this 2-0, and looking forward to your future games next week?
Yeah, I mean it's really we're good at mentality, but we wish we got some higher quality scrims. Like we are not getting as many like high quality teams as we want. So like if any good teams are watching this and wants to scrim, then we're up for
I've
grabs.
got a couple like low plat mates that that have been playing flex. If
Nah, they're too good. Like if you have any gold, then hit us up. But yeah,
Well,
I mean,
that's great,
it was. I was looking forward to more of a banger game, like late game, but they were intent on contesting everything, and then us being stronger at the time, that just sped up the game a lot. And then didn't really get to see the late game skirmishes that would have been more banger. It just looked like we had bottlenecked them and controlled the whole thing, right? So I think hopefully they come more prepared next time, and we'll have a better game done.
Well, so what? Are we calling out Ruddy? Is this what you're doing, Banderas? Is this what you're doing?
I don't want to shit talk. Like I think they're the second best or third best in the team, but I just think that they're better players than this, and they have a higher ceiling. I don't know. Like it can be nerfs. It's early season, right? So like I want the other teams to be as good as possible, because if we don't do good in the E-Masters this split, then NLC might be on the way downwards, right? So I want the two teams representing us doing the best as possible.
Well, it's also like the practice, right? Like if you're playing against good teams, then when you go to wider sort of EMEA championships, you are going to have a high level coming in, and that can put yourself in a better position. Banderas, gonna have to say goodbye to you now. It's been absolutely lovely to chat with you. Anyone you want to shout out just before we say goodbye?
I want to shout out Jord. He knows who he is.
Yeah, Jord. Jord, you're brilliant.
Good shit.
Jord, you're the man. Jord.
we all love you, Jord. Banderas, thank you very much for joining us. Best of luck in your
guys. I'll
upcoming
be rewatching.
fixtures. Hey, Pogchamp, we'll see you later, mate. Right, we are now going to be joined by Niter, mid laner for Ruddy. Unfortunately, not able to get the W today. Just want to get your instant reaction after that game, mate.
I mean, the game was just cringe, honestly. Like, early game, we fucked up twice. We didn't have that many options for the Herald play. I think our position before the third dragon was actually good, but then we just didn't stand our ground. We got monster flanked and we instantly lost the game, so that's what I think.
Pretty accurate, pretty accurate.
Yeah,
so you think the game was still...
that did happen.
I definitely think the game was still winnable after the Camille got 2-0 up, and it became a little bit difficult to just keep matching her around the entire map. Like, how do you think you actually play that out then in those mid-late game stages? You think it's completely entirely in your favor still?
I mean, it felt like enemy team didn't really do anything with the Camille, honestly. Like, we were just trying to match the second Herald the entire time, and we didn't really play for anything but the neutrals fight, because we could still win those, but we just fucked up like the third dragon, and then the game was lost after. I think the third dragon was very much winnable though.
Sure. I mean, do you still feel confident about you guys as a top team? Yesterday was a similar stomp, but in your favor. So there's clearly a massive difference between your lineup and other lineups. Do you think this is you're gonna be able to take it to Riddle next time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this game was... we didn't have that many play opportunities because of what happened early game. I think if that doesn't happen, the game is a lot easier. And we can actually get to play the game.
Just listening to you now, it sounds like quite a sort of frustrating way to sort of lose. Would I be correct in that assessment?
I mean, the game was really boring because it felt like both teams just played really, really bad, but I'm not sure.
Maybe one for the Rob review then.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, despite the loss today, Ruddy still 1-1. Still got a lot of people saying a lot of good things about you guys. So I'm sure this is a case of one bad game, we fix it for next week, and we don't end up falling down in a similar way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have faith in our coaches, so I think we'll make it work. We had a very rough week prior to this, but feels like we've escaped that, but not in time for this week of officials. So.
I got one last question. Are we going to see any of your previously patented Yasuo gameplay coming back in? Because we've seen the Kassadins, we've seen the Rises, we've seen a lot of these kind of mage-type champions now. Are we going to see you back on these other kinds of champs that you were a bit more known for back in the day?
We have something prepared if the scenario happens from draft, so you'll probably see it at some point.
All right.
I like that. I like that. Okay, that's a good
Let's
answer.
go.
That's a good answer. The possibility of Yasuo is always great.
For sure.
Thank you, Naito, so much for obviously coming on the interview with us. Commiserations for the loss today. Before I let you go, anyone you want to shout out? Anyone you want to chat about?
I mean, I heard the last part of Bandera's interview. He said, "Shout out Jord." No, I'll do the same.
Yeah, Jord. Whoever you are
Yeah,
out there, got a lot of people vouching for you.
If you know,
I've got
you
a
know.
mate that needs to move house on Friday. I wonder if you're interested. But Naito, yeah, as I said, thank you so much for joining us. And best of luck for your games next week. I'm sure that any issues you got are going to be rectified by then. See you, man. Veteran, I believe we're done.
I do believe we are. We are
I do believe
indeed,
that's
but the
been a
NLC
full
is
day
not done.
of
Is it?
NLC. Well, there is going to be more NLC at some point. But how are we feeling off the back of today's games? I feel like we've had a pretty decent mix of fast-paced, slow-paced, bangers, crazy moments. It's been a good one.
I'm worn out, mate. I'm ready to collapse because every game has actually been a banger today. The first game was ridiculously intense and it just kind of kept going. Even the ones that were stomps, it was so interesting how they were stomps because these weren't teams we were expecting to do it. Teams showed us that they can do a lot of things. Some teams showed us they do one thing extremely well. Some teams showed us that their particular playstyles are actually open to certain vulnerabilities. And some teams like Riddle just didn't really show us that many weaknesses that other teams can exploit yet. But the options are still there. The confidence is still there, even from teams like Ruddy that just lost to them, that they can take it to them. So it makes me very excited about NLC moving forward. Very sorry for Unique because they have to face this first game next week after facing two other top teams. But everything else, I'm feeling so confident about that. I'm glad the NLC is going to continue. And I'm glad that you and me are going to get to continue along with it as well. So I want to see where this goes.
It's definitely been a lot of fun, and I'm for sure looking forward to the games next week. Yeah, we're going to be starting off with Unique versus Riddle. That's going to be at 6 p.m. CET, 5 p.m. UK, and other times if you live in other places. Veteran, thank you so much for joining me this evening. It has been an absolute pleasure. I have been Middelkoff. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.